In the sixth expression of Virgo, we're discussing perfecting. The perfecting of self, the perfecting of your way of life, all that you do, all that you are. It's a very high aspiration, but Virgo really stays with it. Virgo constantly kind of moves towards being perfect if they can. And in Virgo 26, the boy with the censer is an image of this. A young choir boy waving an incense censer in service to the ritual that he's performing. He can't do that unless he's thinking very clearly about what he's doing and nothing else. Any pride would destroy the moment. He needs not to be there. And this is why a young boy is very often chosen rather than an older man. And I don't see any reason why a girl should not fit the bill too. It's just that these gender definitions were not made clear in the time of Elsie Wheeler's declarations. But the boy with the censer is this choir boy who is humble. And it's not just an ancient, archaic Roman Catholic tradition. It's practiced in all of the religions. I've seen it in the Sufis in Istanbul, where the dervishes are the equivalent. The young men, a bit older than choir boys, maybe around 18, that kind of age. They carry the water around the dervish group to see if anyone wants to drink water. And they're an absolute picture of humility. And when they're doing their turning practice, it's the same thing. You can't do that if you're thinking about yourself. You just can't do it. So Virgo 26 is to do with introduction of ritual into your life in order that you can train yourself in humility. Not now in the expression of humility despite being quite prideful. It's not what we're talking about. We're talking about actually tasting what humility feels like and knowing that you love that feeling more than any other feeling that you've had. And so you practice it again and again and again, and you know that that's the highest spiritual station, the station of humility. It's at that level. Now, Virgo 27, the grand dames at tea, these older women dressed exactly so in the way that they must dress, drinking tea in exactly the way that you're supposed to drink tea if you're a part of this very elite circle of rich people, no doubt. They're representing the same principle, ironically. They are conducting a ritual wherein there's a way of doing things, and if you're not doing it exactly in that way, it is considered too self-oriented. They're not humble people, but they're practicing humility in the worldly sense by obeying the ritual of tea ceremony in the West rather than the tea ceremony of Japan. But it's the same idea. You just do things the way they must be done to perfection. And actually, if you actually can try to find something of that type to do exactly so, you'll notice that your ego self, doesn't have a part to play. It's the expression of humility in the worldly sense of community interaction. Now, Virgo 28, the bald-headed man, seems so very far away from that idea. But what we then have to understand is that these women learning how to drink tea properly exercised a tremendous amount of will to overcome the inclination to be slapdash about it or emotional. And the same with the bald-headed man. The bald-headed man is an image of strong will, and this man is perfected his ability to control himself so that he actually can extend that into the world and take a commanding position. And so the perfecting of self eventually takes you into the world at a very high level of interaction. and what you say goes. That's how you measure how perfect you are. And this is across the board. It takes place in the business field, in the field of education, in the field of spiritual practice and religion, and across the field. If you've actually really worked it out to the level where you are perfect at what you do, you're going to have a very commanding influence over your community. And in Virgo 29, the man is gaining knowledge from a paper he's reading. And this is where we go. I mean, when you actually got to be on top of the material world, kind of, where else are you going to go? You're going to study the mysteries. Somebody who's actually on top of the phenomenal world has nowhere to go. They've reached the top. So they move into the world of mystery. And they understand then that the mysteries were known a long time ago and have been known for thousands and thousands of years and have been recorded too. Not necessarily in the written word, which is rather untrustworthy for many reasons. We can't encapsulate something as subtle and wondrous and big as the mystery of life in a word which is definite, defined, limited, and culturally biased. It's not necessarily meaningful, that word, in any onomatopoeic sense, which mantric languages would afford, but vernacular languages typically written in books would not. So we need to look beneath the surface of the written word, and we need to look through symbols, and we need to take it upon ourselves to understand that we will never be told the answer to our question, what does this symbol mean? People will give us ideas, but different people will give us different ideas. And all of these ideas are contextualized anyway. It means this in this situation, but that in the other situation. You've got to work it out for yourself. And that's what this man is doing. He's trying to work it out for himself. And in Virgo 30, you find out what he has learned for himself, is that there's many a false call. And you have to unhear them. People tell lies. People make mistakes, even when they think they're telling the truth. People say things ambiguously or confusingly. And this information, whether it's spoken or written or whatever, is false to some extent. There may be truth within it, but the message itself is certain to some extent to be false. That's the nature of it all. That's how the mystery is veiled, because it's the case that people tell you stuff that they don't know is true. That charlatans are much, much more numerous than real teachers. And we have to learn how to tell the difference. So we have to put ourselves actually sitting at the with a charlatan and listening to the words of a false teacher in order to learn what is their false call. We have to expose ourselves to all of these messages and just to say, well, look, I don't feel good about this, that, and the other. That doesn't seem right. That one is the one I'm comfortable with, and you have to trust that that's yours. And so we come in the end to this whole thing of perfecting, is that it's actually subjective. There is no measurement of whether you are perfect. I think you have to assume that you're not. We're not talking about making perfect. We're talking about perfecting, moving towards being more perfect. And the determinant of whether or not you are is your call. It's not somebody else's measurement. And Virgo will find that a challenge. Virgo really does like measurement, and they like to be seen to be right and correct and good and so on. But in the end, there is no one to inspect you. There's no one to examine you. In the end, you are your own examiner. You determine what is perfect for yourself.